Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. I am happy to be sitting down and doing some artwork because most of the time I'm standing up when I do my artwork at a canvas. So it's just nice. Um, Throughout my career as an illustrator, the great majority, not great, the majority of my work was watercolor. So I've actually been a full-time watercolorist for about 25 years and a full-time oil painter for about 15. So do the math. I've actually done a lot more watercolors. But nowadays, of course, for the last 10, 15 years, I'm almost entirely doing oils. So it's really fun for me to go back and get back into water. I think that line's crooked. Hang on just a second. This is not supposed to be part of the broadcast. But all of a sudden I look down and say, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. I use this ruler with lines on it, as you can see. And it is not right. Wow, glad I checked. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, part of the reason I'm actually, normally when I'm doing a sketch, I'm not that, it doesn't matter, the ratios and the boundaries don't matter that much. But in this case, this is a watercolor sketch preparatory for a commissioned oil painting. And the commissioned oil painting is going to be a custom size 30 by 44. So I've very carefully measured this out. So this is 30 by 44. Now, if you've never seen me do a watercolor before, again, buckle your seatbelt. It's different. Surprise, surprise. It's different. And by the way, here is my go-by reference is my new friend Jerry. I'm doing this painting for Jerry, and I'm doing a painting of his bar in his basement. And I have to include he and his wife, very roughly, very abstractly. But there are just enough unknowns in this painting, in the oil painting, that I feel like I need to do a watercolor sketch and show it to Jerry before I go straight to oil painting. Like, I don't know, does he want people sitting at the bar with their backs to us? Things like that. I sort of think he does. Anyway, so whenever there are a lot of decisions like that need to be made, I try to do a sketch. Okay, so here's what's unusual about this is my, I'm being loose here, not literal. This is my patented approach to doing watercolor sketches. Now, I like it quite a bit. It's something I just stumbled on years ago and have, like my oil painting, and have just continued to develop it over the years. As you can see, it entails starting with a watercolor, with plural watercolor pencils, and you'll see in a minute. So at the moment, I'm using a yellow ochre pencil. In another couple minutes, I'll be using something slightly darker than this. I don't know what yet. That remains to be seen. While I'm drawing, though, I can go ahead and begin to explain the rationale, the thinking behind, especially in case you don't have time to watch me do the whole thing. I want you to understand, why do I start with watercolor pencils, and then specifically, why do I start with, in this case, yellow ochre? The principle is I start with a light color. Probably the most common for me to start with is yellow, straight up yellow, but this time I just decided to do yellow ochre instead of yellow, so slightly warmer than straight up yellow. So the idea, the principle is, this is my first sketch, my first very loose rendering of the subject matter. And In a minute, I'll switch to a slightly darker color. When I hit the paper with the darker color, darker than yellow ochre, the next drawing, if you stick with me, this is what you'll see. But if you have to leave soon, I'll describe it to you. When I hit the paper drawing with the darker color, the yellow ochre, lighter color, virtually, and I don't mean this literally, but it virtually disappears because our eyes go instantly to the dark lines and barely even notice. That's the literal truth. The lines don't disappear, but they don't get our attention because our attention is riveted, taken over by. I'm changing my mind here, right off the bat. So our attention is taken over by the darker color. And this is, by the way, why I start with a very light color, so I can make all kinds, so I can change my mind a whole bunch. Does that make sense? So again, if you could just stick with me, you'll see this thing. So there is the basic outline of Jerry's bar. Here's how tall he is. I have a decent picture of Jerry. And again, here's the go by. And even though his eyes are closed and his face isn't that great, I really sort of like the jaunty. I really like the jaunty hands on hips thing that's happening there. So I'm very likely to keep that. And then his wife, whom I have not met. I think she was at a social function that I was at a couple weeks ago where I met Jerry, but I didn't meet her. I talked to him, not her. But she has just short of shoulder length blonde hair and is maybe not that much shorter. So let me make her a little taller here. And I think it would be wise to have one of them, so they're not both just standing there posing. I'll have her perhaps handing the viewer a drink. How about that? Plus, that allows me to put her body at a 3/4 angle, as she is in this photograph, as a matter of fact, which is generally a more flattering angle than just straight on. So that's good. Now, do we want people at the bar? See, I'm not sure because, well, maybe I can fit one in over here because if I put people at the bar, it's going to block our view of the bar, which is, of course, the main thing. I had a great time talking with Jerry about his bar. It's obvious that all these fancy drinks are the work of artisans, craftsmen, artists, whose preferred medium is spirits. If I can do one, maybe I can do two people, because I don't want one person sitting at the bar. So let's do two. One's a man, one's a woman. No, I will not put the man's arm around the... And then maybe just a part of his silhouette of somebody up here. I'm not sure. Yeah, that gives me 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is better than an even number. Okay, so that's end of yellow ochre. Now I have all these pencils. Orange would be a good go-to color next. I have 2 different shades of orange. Of course, red would be another. If I want to go kind of crazy, I could go with a lavender or green. That would be crazy. Okay, I have to make up my mind here. Which way am I going to go? Which way am I going to go around the color wheel? So if I go consonant, that as opposed to dissonant, If I go consonant, I'll go orange or red. If I go dissonant, that is across the color wheel, straight across, of course, would be purple. This purple's too dark. If I go another dissonant the other way, it'd be green. No, consonant going the other direction would be green. Let me explain what's going to happen, though, before I do it. I do the colored pencil for two reasons. One is the one I've already told you about, that as soon as I start drawing in a darker color and making corrections, Yes, Jasem, this stream is going to be on the channel later. It sure will. You can watch it later if you'd like. Thanks for watching. Thanks for asking. The other thing, the other reason for doing drawings... Hey, David. Yeah, I know that humility, that darn humility just keeps sneaking out, doesn't it? Is that when I go to watercolor, on top of this, all of these underneath colors will bleed. And even though that might sound like a bad thing, it's actually a very good thing. I will get all these wonderful colors creating a unified palette in my watercolor. No matter what glazes or what washes I put down, it'll be unified by the colored pencil that's coming up. So let me think. Sorry, hang on. And again, here's my reference. I'm not going to do, my painting won't be this red, although that gives you an idea. It was a very, very warm room with all this warm wood. So it'll be a warm painting, which makes me think I should actually go the other way around the color wheel then. Instead of going orange and red, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go either, then I'm narrowing it down. Either I'm going to go the other way. Yeah, I'm going to go green. Okay, now just the question is, which of these greens? I'm just looking at the lead here. Yeah, going to go with that one. Okay, so now, drawing number 2. Making changes. The first change I'm going to make is I'm going to make this woman move over a little bit. Put short sleeves on her. Does it? Seems like my studio lighting is low. Well, let me see what I can do about that. Thank you for telling me that, David. I do have an easel right next to me that I can bring over, and that didn't do much, did it? Hang on, let me try something else. Bring it down closer. Now I know as soon as I stood up and got away, it got light because my body is between. Let's see if that's any better. My body is, there's a window behind me, so when I get out of the way, the light from the window comes in, but I can't stay out of the way and work. So let's try this. Now, one thing that I could do if I have a woman and a man, I want to catch the side of the man's face, so that I'm not just getting, the backs of all these people. First of all, it's a drawing, an artist's cop-out to just draw straight on, looking straight at the back of people. So let's try this. Close enough for now. I'll come back and probably work at that a little bit later. Maybe his elbow going outside. Okay, now let me get Jerry and his wife. So here, this time around, I want to. Now, I told you, by the way, I told you this principle that when you start drawing in a darker color, the lighter color begins to disappear. Now, here's a bit of the irony in that the color green that I've chosen is actually quite close to the, so I'm not getting the effect as intensely as I often do, but bear with me. I will continue to draw in subsequent darker and darker and darker tones, and you will see this principle. So again, if you're able to watch the end of this process, Jerry has a narrower chin. There we go. That's looking a little bit like him. I hope that you're able to see the end of this process, because that's where it really gets fun. Doggone it. I've made Jerry too small. So after all that drawing, again, here we go. Gonna make him bigger, move him closer. In other words, he was too far back in the bar. So I really am going to need to do some pretty radical redrawing in order to get these characters right. So let me stay loose. Let me not get so tight. Okay, let's go back to, here's the bar in front of the bar. And there's a faucet right here. There we go. Then there's pictures and so forth here. There we go. And oh yes, and then some. These people also need to be bigger. Whew! I'm not liking the way those look, so bear with me. Or don't. You don't have to bear with me. I gotta bear with myself though, that's for sure. Couple glasses, and then a person, again, I think a man, I think up here, just coming into the picture. So because this color green is not a whole lot darker than the yellow, you're seeing the effect. You see how our eyes go to the green more than to the earlier yellow ochre, because the green is darker, and that process is going to continue. And as you heard just a minute ago, I've decided, since this is going to be such a warm painting, I decided to, yes, these are watercolor pencils, exactly. And here's one of my collections of watercolor pencils. I have a couple others. This is part of my larger watercolor kit. I have a couple small watercolor kits. Because again, I did watercolors mostly for 30 years, 25 years, before I started doing oil painting. And I'm doing a painting that's going to go on the wall. It's going to go on the wall right here. The painting not this watercolor, but the oil painting I'm doing is going to go right here. So I'm thinking that in my painting, I should include my painting. Get it? So it's going to be a painting within a painting. I think that's kind of fun. So I was saying I had quite a good time talking to Jerry about his collection. And one of the things I learned, I think this is probably pretty typical. I'm guessing. I'm not an expert at such things. But I'm just judging by my little exposure in conversation with Jerry, I am thinking that people who have these kinds of bars, connoisseur bars in their home, are not the kind of people who struggle with alcohol. Quite the contrary. At least that's my impression. And in a way, that's counterintuitive, right? Somebody might think, well, man, this guy's got a real problem. Or people like this have a real problem. The fact is quite the opposite. He has some bottles. Anyway, it's a collection and it's a hobby. it was fascinating because it's a world I know nothing about, and it was quite fun just hearing him talk about it and talk about all these exotic and expensive bottles. I mean, I forget, but there were several bottles here that were in the hundreds of dollars per bottle. And there was probably some more extreme than that. I don't remember. Okay, so that's color number 2. So I've drawn it once in yellow ochre, second time in green. So that typically, and I'm going to do typical right here, that typically means I continue around the color wheel, right? I'm actually sitting in my studio. Sorry for the earthquake here. I wanted to see if I could get a color wheel. Never mind, I won't bother. Oh yeah, thank you, David. I'm meeting with my advisor tomorrow to talk about the next step. I hope to do my homework this afternoon because he gave me a bunch of homework and I haven't done it yet. It entails initially things like creating playlists on my YouTube channel. So I'm looking. Hang on. I'm looking for a blue now. So let me pick up several blues and decide which direction I want to go. In the weeks or months to come, it will probably entail me branching out into other mediums, like maybe Twitch, things like that. I've heard of Twitch. I haven't looked at it. I may have it on my phone. I don't remember. I don't know what color all of these are. So let's see. Nope, that's too dark. That's too gray. That's too dark. And that's too dark. We're narrowing it down here really fast. That's too green, and that's too light. No, I'm going to go with that last one. I am going to sharpen it. Bear with me just a minute while I lean over here to my left and sharpen it. I buy these pencil sharpeners, by the way. You know, every 2 or 3 trips into the art store, I'll pick up 2 or 3. Number one, I don't want to have to look for them. I want them everywhere. So I have over here at my left, yes, I have 3 of them right here. They wear out, by the way. Colors to get azo green. My goodness, that's a good question. Azo green, I think, is a paint color, so theoretically you shouldn't be able to mix it. That's the theory. The reality is you can. And I do not know. That's a great question. Somebody else help me here. Look it up. If I had my Google on, I would just go ahead and look it up. Okay, so this is my third drawing. I would look up first of all azo green, and then try to answer the question: what color would you mix to make it? Now, this drawing of these characters is in that unique range where I want it to look like them, but I don't want it to look like a portrait of them. Does that make sense? I want this to look like Jerry, and of course, this is just a sketch, so this is not so important. But I want to work out some of the issues a little bit. Of course, that's why I'm doing the sketch. I want it to look like Jerry, but I don't want it to look like the artist. The artist, tried to do a portrait of Jerry. So it's a real balancing act, real balance between a degree of realism and a degree of abstraction. How many buttons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Jerry, nice trim young man. I'm kidding about the young part. I believe he's older than I am. People are getting younger and younger. I don't know if you young people, it's quite the trip. You start out young in life and you sort of get used to being young. Next thing you know, you turn around and you're old. What happened? I used to be one of the young people. My, that was quick. And here is a foreshortened arm of Jerry's wife. Tragically, I don't even know her name, but she's holding out her arm toward us, the viewer. I just want to get sort of the general shape of their heads and bodies, not, and probably in the oil painting, I'll try to do even less detail than this. Now you can see, and I know this is almost starting to get too boring for you, but now you can see this principle at work very much, where with each subsequent drawing, the darker color eclipses the lighter color. Oh yeah, glasses on this guy. That's a good idea. Glasses are good for rendering people from behind. Without showing their face, it gives us a feeling that we're seeing their face to some degree. Okay. Now, also, I don't necessarily need to redraw every single line. I only need to draw the ones that need drawing. Is that clear as mud? I only need to pencil over the lines that actually ask to be penciled over. Jerry's Bar, cash only. That's a joke. I mean, that's what it says. Here's my photograph that I'm going by. Jerry's Bar, neon light, cash only. It was about a year and a half ago. In fact, it was very close. You can go back and find it. It was Daily Art Adventure number. There were several of them. 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, honestly, I started my Daily Art Adventure on January 1st of 2017, little over a year and a half ago. And until recently, I was averaging 5 broadcasts per week. That may change, of course. Then I took the biggest break of my entire project in the last 2 weeks, where I took nearly 2 weeks off. But if you're interested, I do a side-by-side test, so to speak. I did a watercolor painting, 2 watercolor paintings of fancy, large, old, historic Victorian houses. And one of them I did in a traditional watercolor technique. That is a little bit of graphite pencil, but very little pencil, very little anything, just all pure transparent watercolor, no white, and so forth. And then I did a second painting, where I used this technique, and I asked my viewers to judge. Oh, I know what it is. It's on Facebook. That's right. I'm sorry. It's not on YouTube. It's on Facebook. So if you want to see that, you can go to Facebook, Dan Nelson Art, and go all the way back to January of 2017, and you can watch that side by side. And when all the voting was done, it was nearly 50-50. In other words, pretty much the same number of people preferred one style, the what I call the legit style, the official, technical, accepted in American Watercolor Society. Half the people liked that one better. The other people, slightly more, liked this technique. And here's the big difference. Since this technique that I'm doing right now is considerably faster than the traditional watercolor approach. That, to me, so this is a year and a half ago, that to me was a big encouragement to say, okay, let's keep doing it this way, because it was like it's 1/3 of the time, perhaps. Oh, I know these people are standing up. That'll save me a little bit of trouble. I don't have to try to figure out where their stool is, so on. So that's going to help a little bit. So they've just walked up to the bar. That's a little bit more natural. There we go. Whew. Okay, so I'm just about ready here to go to probably my last drawing in pencil. Again, I'm looking at the photograph, trying to see, reflect somewhat. There's a couple of books stacked here. There's bottles on every shelf, but there are books and bottles and photographs, family pictures, and so forth, as well as bottles. So, by the way, I don't know if you notice, I switched my grip. When I started these drawings, I was doing what I call my sketch grip, like this side saddle, and then at some point I switched over to a drawing, which I think is that's the difference between the real drawing is done this way. The details are done this way. Okay, third drawing done. Next, I either go to purple or to red. I don't know which of those I'm going to do yet. Let me grab out some purple. I know I don't want this one. It's way too light. I could go to a fuchsia color, couldn't I? Sort of halfway between purple and red. That's an option. Well, let me test the colors here. That's pretty nice. Could be darker. Let's see what this one is. Oop, oh, that's too brown. I don't know why I picked that one up. Oh, I know, because I thought it was fuchsia, but it doesn't look very fuchsia to me. And that's too brown. Okay, so these are the two possibilities. Again, take a minute to sharpen this one. Let me show you again. Just, you know how to sharpen a pencil, but here's the operation. I know, I was going to tell you that these pencil sharpeners wear out. Part of the reason I buy so many, if you are using one of those pencil sharpeners and your pencil keeps breaking, pencil breaks, it's probably because this blade is dull. So throw that out and get another one. I'm going to start with this red now. Oh yeah. Actually, I like that quite a bit. Okay, that's it. I'm going to do the red. It's interacting very nicely with the colors that are underneath. Now, who knows what it's going to look like? In a way, you can tell that. In a way, if you're familiar with my oil painting, you can see a correlation between this technique. I feel like you should be able to say, yep, that is the way. A person like Dan Nelson, that is the way he would do it, because it fits, it correlates to his oil painting technique, because this correlates to the layers of all of this will show up, of course, as underpainting. When I commence to doing the overpainting. Yeah, that's nice. I say that about my drawing of that woman's face. Little trick here. I don't know if it's let me draw here. when you have to draw a very foreshortened subject matter, in this case, a hand that's reaching toward you like this, right? Let me change that angle a little bit. How do you, and of course the perspective here is crazy, but how do you indicate? Let me put that pencil down, pick up another one. In fact, let me pick up a piece of scrap paper so I don't draw through. Here's one of the tricks for indicating, especially if the person is wearing clothing, but even if they're not, one of the ways to indicate that foreshortened, same thing with the fingers here. How do you show, of course, besides you have to get the shape right, that goes without saying, but how do you show that this arm and this hand are pointed toward you? Do you see what I'm trying to indicate here? One of the, and I'm going to make this real obvious, real dark here. This curve, in fact, these curves right here, and then anywhere that I can, like if I put a bracelet or a watch on this person, it will add to the illusion. Same thing here. Here's a finger. Do you see how these lines go around? Here's a globe. These are latitudes. These are longitude. Have I got that right? Yes, longitude, latitude. So if you draw an arm that's coming toward you, you want to try to find some excuse for drawing latitudinal curves corresponding to the lines of a globe. Do you see that? This would be the longitude. But the longitudinal lines do not very much help convey that the arm is coming toward you. But the latitude. Have I got that word right? 45th. I grew up very close to the 45th parallel latitude. Yeah. The equator. Okay. So anyway, I'm doing that here on this woman's arm. I just did it big for you so you could see it. Do you see this is her sleeve? There's that curve that goes a long way to creating the illusion. Besides, of course, you have to get the shape right. You have to get the anatomy correct. But the latitudinal lines go a long way to giving the impression that the arm is extending toward us. Now, I just realized I have a tendency, boy, I should have checked this before now. I have a very bad habit of going crooked when I'm drawing. Yeah, let me correct some. A little bit late for this, but better late than never. Let me take this. Do you see? I tend to go. What is it? I tend to go reverse italic. If italics lean this way, my drawings. That's crazy. I've often wondered, what is it? Do I have what's the word? Something wrong with my eyes that I do that? Now, I do find I do it much less when I'm standing up. In fact, virtually not. So it has something to do with drawing in a sitting down position. That's weird. At least I remembered to check it. So I'm using this triangle right now, holding it against the bottom of the paper, just to make sure that my verticals actually are vertical. Okay. Whew. Yeah, glad I did that. Okay, now I'm getting down to probably the last drawing. I could go to purple. In fact, let me pick up purple and just do a little bit of it and see how we like it. Yeah, see, even the purple is slightly darker even than the fuchsia. So yes, I'm actually going to use the purple up here on these people that are up in the foreground. I once had a teacher, I don't mean like a school teacher, I had an art friend who pointed out to me just a quick reference when you're drawing clothing, that the wrinkles in clothing can be thought of, just to help you a little bit, as a series of X, Y's, and Z's. This kind of stuff. this kind of stuff here on Jerry's sleeve. A series of X's and Y's and Z's. Okay, so that's purple. Let's go back to red now for a bit. Again, I don't need to draw everything. Now, here at this point, I have another diversion in my technique. I could go one of two ways, and I don't know which way I'm going to go with this yet. And that is, I just go from here straight to watercolors, or sometimes I do actually ink, black ink on top of this drawing, and then that becomes my very last layer of drawing is in black ink. And then of course it's not only a watercolor sketch, it's a watercolor plus pen and ink. But even while I'm telling you that, I've made up my mind, and I decided which way I'm going to go with that, because that sometimes I do it one way, sometimes. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from here straight to watercolor, and if I want to, after the watercolor, and this is an exception worth taking note of, because it's contrary to what it's counterintuitive, contrary to what most people think. And I have again, you can, if you want to watch YouTube, Dan Nelson watercolor or watercolor sketch, you can see me do this technique where I do the watercolor first and the pen and ink second. Most people would assume that an artist would do the ink first and the watercolor last. But I have actually, more often than not, find it helpful, in fact, to go the other way around. That is to do the watercolor first and then come back with pen and ink. Again, counterintuitive, not the way you did it when you were a kid. All right. I'm just adding a little scribble in here now for color. Yahoo. Debating whether to take a little break here. Nope, I'm going to keep going. So again, this video is getting a little bit long, but let's continue here. Let me get this out of my way. Here is my one of my watercolor kits. I've already sprayed all these about 25 minutes ago. I'll come back and spray them all again. The colors here are in, actually for me, I would hold it, they're in the same order I do my oils in. Starting at the bottom left corner is violet, purple, and cool reds, warm reds, orange, yellow, greens, cool greens, phthalo blue, ultramarine. Hey Kim, welcome. Thanks for joining us for the first time. So it's a color wheel from here to here. This is ultramarine, or a purplish blue, right? And then I do my browns light to dark. Now, this palette doesn't have quite enough bays for the colors I had, so I actually had to add a cool, like a Hansa yellow, light yellow there. Anyway, so hang on just a second. Let me get my brushes over here. Again, this is all part of my large watercolor kit. I have several smaller kits. These are the small brushes already separate in a box. Most of the small brushes. Here's one that escaped. Yeah. And then my big brushes. And yes, these are the kinds of brushes. I'm going to do most of this painting with brushes roughly this size. Now these brushes held together by a rubber band, those are special. Those are used for masking. So these are not for watercolor, they're for watercolor mask. Of course, I have one of my all-time, one of my old friends, a chip brush in here. I'll tell you later what the spoon is for, maybe. So now let's get organized here. This tray is a little bit big for the workspace I'm in right now. Done with the triangle, done with the pencils. I'm the kind of watercolor painter, I absolutely have to have a box of Kleenex or tissue right on hand the whole time while I'm painting, because I use tissue a lot. Get my reference out of the way. I use a spray bottle a lot, and I use Kleenex tissue a lot. Oh, I don't have my rinse jar. Now this may put a little dent in our plans here. I'm sorry, I did not get this ready. I've got water in the bottom of this. It's pretty far down. Hang on just a second. Here's some clean water I can add to that. And I'll just say that's good enough. All right, that'll get me. Sorry about that. Of course, normally I have a large, and again, I find so many times students are afraid to use big containers. You know, most students would consider this a large container. I call that one of the small. Now, my travel kit, that's the size I use. But when I'm working here in my studio, I want a big container. Okay. Which one of these brushes? That one looks a little dirty for some reason. So I'm not going to use that one. Here we go. Nice 3-inch brush. Now, where's the lightest light source in this painting? Is Jerry's bald head. I'm just going to start out by washing this whole thing. As you can see, this is not exactly traditional watercolor painting, right? Okay, enough of that. Let's go to something smaller. For some reason, when it comes to watercolors, I am for some reason hooked on flat brushes. I'm not recommending, I'm not telling you to be hooked on flat brushes, but I am. Picking up some warm yellow, orange. Let's just start the woodwork. This is a cheap brush. It's working very well, except I just discovered just a second ago that the ferrule is wiggling. That means this brush got left sitting in water one day, maybe many days. I don't mean it was in water for many days, but maybe several times it's been left sitting in water, which is the very thing I try very hard not to do. Do not leave your acrylic or watercolor brushes sitting in water. No, not even for 5 minutes while you go do something else. And again, I'm usually really careful about that. So I don't know how this got loose. Well, just because it happens over years and years of use. But you, as much as possible, you do not want your brushes getting wiggly like that. Now, I tightened it and it's okay now. But I didn't decide what to do with this woman's other arm. Huh, I'm adding it right now. Now, as you know, I sprayed this. I'm working wet in wet right now, which keeps me from getting too tight which I like just fine. And of course you can see how the watercolor pencil colors are just coming up. Coming to life and affecting the overall painting. I sure do hope this painting turns out okay, since I'm broadcasting live. If I'm screwing up, I'm doing it in front of God and everybody. Wouldn't be the first time. Oh, by the way, I need to remind myself, I am not being paid to do this sketch. All this is supposed to be is a sketch to get approval from my client Jerry for his oil painting. So let's keep that in mind, shall we? I'm sorry, I just missed somebody's comment there a minute ago. I'm sorry about that. If you'll do it again, I'll try to catch it next time. Otherwise, I'll look forward to reading it later on my computer. I'm thinking this is working. So you can see in some of these areas where I'm coming in with the dark paint and especially the yellow. Well, there's a slight cast of yellow from the yellow ochre pencil, but the green and the blue are really showing up, and I think they're creating a very nice contrast to the overall color of my painting, which of course is going to be this warm, very brown subject matter. And I'm liking the way the blue and the green is peeking through, that complementary color peeking through. The red is there for sure, and I'm actually using the red quite a bit as guidelines for my painting, but the red isn't having nearly the impact, the visual impact that the blue and the green is. So I am, it turns out, very glad that I decided to go with green underpainting. Ironic, I've been thinking this whole time that I'm painting with brown paint, which I am. But as soon as I put it on a human being's hair, now that woman suddenly has very, very red hair. Isn't that funny? In fact, one time I was in a room, this is just how we perceive color, which is quite an interesting study. I was somewhere, and there was a child in the room with fiery red hair. It was beautiful red hair, quite, the subject of conversation. I think maybe even the adults were talking about it. It was one of those, I don't remember if it was a boy or a girl, but it was, striking and beautiful red hair. And the family also owned a golden retriever. The golden retriever came in, laid down on the floor, and the child laid his head down on the golden retriever, and nobody else that I know of, but I gasped because it turns out the child that had this striking red hair and the golden retriever, their hair was exactly the same color. But when we look at the human being, we say, wow, that is red hair. And when we look at that same exact color on a dog, we say golden. Isn't that funny? At least I thought it was funny. Then again, I am easily amused, evidently. Has a lot to do with perception. Funny, I'm just rambling now, but since you're watching and I'm painting, I'll ramble. Speaking of red hair, I had an experience one time. It was about 13 or 14 years ago, back when I was jogging pretty intensely. Not jogging, running. Not jogging, running. And all you runners know exactly what I mean by that. And I was out about 5 miles from home, so I was doing a 10-mile run. I was out in the country, and a young man came walking down the road the opposite direction from me. And he literally had the most beautiful red hair I've ever seen on a human being in my life. It was in the sun, and it was spectacular. I think I stopped and stared. I honestly do. At this, he looked like he was about 15 years old and a pretty full head of hair. And it was spectacular. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything except maybe that I'm a weird artist. And, weird artists notice things like that. And I remember it to this day. I would like to see that kid again. And it was a boy, wasn't he? It wasn't a beautiful redhead girl. It was a boy with the most spectacular. Yes, I'm talking to myself. You, I can't wait till I get with my advisor and he says, "Hey, you know that weird story about the redhead kid? That's weird. Don't do that." Oh boy. I've been married to my wife, my first wife, for 38 years. We still are very happy. I'm happy to say we're very happy. And every once in a while, I'll think of something from my childhood that I've never told anybody. Some of those childhood secrets that are unless you ever remember them, that they're going to remain secrets the rest of your life. Things that you did, or things that you thought about thinking, things that you thought about doing. And I thought there were two of them. I'm not going to tell these to you because I can't remember what they were, but it's just kind of fun. I usually preface my statement by, "Hey, baby, I just thought of something. I've never told anybody this in my whole life." And she will laugh because she kind of knows what's coming. It's another meaningless bit of trivia. It's just, but I've never thought about telling anybody, so it feels like I've been keeping secrets from you, baby. We've been married 38 years, and I'm still keeping secrets. See, that's starting to look right, isn't it? Now, what color clothing do I put on these people? That is a very good question. I have no idea. I'm going to start out with a lavender-ish on this girl. Very dirty lavender, I must say. Yeah, and that's probably good because I don't want it too intense. But since I put lavender on her, I can probably get away with putting ultramarine blue on this guy. And while I'm at it, changing the color of both of their hair. That's what got me thinking about this. What got me talking about the beautiful red-haired boy from 14 years ago, out in the country. Was this girl's color hair right here that I don't want to be a fiery red. By the way, now this does have a little bit to do with art. So if you want me to stop talking about silly non-artistic things, this is your lucky moment. This does have to do with art. It's a correlation that I've made many times over the years. And it's important to understand, I think, just if you've never processed this. A photographer is showing what is possible, right? If a photographer, to use a classic example, sometimes a sunset or a sunrise sky, any kind of sky, but especially sunrise or sunset, a sky can do extraordinary things like, dang, I have never seen, here's how people respond, I've never seen clouds like that in my entire life. Are you with me? That's a place for a camera. The photographer then can pick up his camera and clickety-click, shoot this unusual cloud formation or whatever it is that we're talking about. Does that make sense? The painter most certainly does not have that same freedom. A painter cannot honestly say, and I mean, you're nuts if you try to do this, I think. You can't paint a weird sunset sky or any kind of sky and say, no, honest, one time I saw the clouds. It was actually, it looked exactly like this. If you do that, everybody's going to look at you like, that sarcastic, like, you're an idiot look, that's what I'm trying to convey without you seeing my face. If you try to paint a strange thing that you have seen, I've told this story before, and I said, if you see a turtle sitting on top of a fence post, grab your camera and take a picture. But that doesn't mean that you can now start painting turtles on top of fence posts, unless it's a cartoon, of course, then you can, which I have actually done cartoons. That's probably why this comes to mind. I've actually done a cartoon of this, and as an assignment. It wasn't just me being silly. That was the assignment, to do a cartoon of a turtle sitting on a fence post. But unless it's a cartoon, you can't do silly things in your paintings. Now let me correlate all this. This is what I really want you to hear and understand. That as painters, we are always doing fiction. Photographers are doing nonfiction. Now you have to know the meaning of those words, right? Fiction means false, not true, right? And nonfiction means true. Journalism, stories, history. As painters, and this is the important thing, as painters, we have to paint the believable, not the possible. And sometimes student painters get that mixed up. As painters, we have to paint what is believable, not what is possible. Photographers can photograph what is possible. The sky's the limit. I can think of so many examples. Like a tornado came through, and I've seen this one time up in Michigan, lots of tornadoes, and me and my friend walking through the woods found a shack, maybe a hunting shack, that had been blown to smithereens. All the walls and the roof were gone. Nothing was left of the house except the slab, the concrete slab, and some of the furniture. And there was a stove, old-fashioned oil gas burning stove there, and a pot sitting on top of the stove. Hey, that's possible. And here's the absurd point that I'm making. By the way, I'm just about done painting. Here's the absurd point that I'm making, that you can't paint stupid stuff that's possible, because everybody will look at it and go, that's ridiculous. That doesn't happen. If you have a camera, you can take a picture, and that still does give you permission to do a painting of it. Okay, break time. You're lucky. I'm done with the hairdryer. And by the way, the paper, of course, begins to curl up. And when that happens, you need to turn the page over and dry the back of the page. Because the water, of course, in watercolor is not just sitting on top of this paper. The water is soaked in fact, soaked all the way through the paper. So all the time you have to dry. If you have a hairdryer, I'd rather use a heat gun actually than a hairdryer, because it's hotter and quieter and faster. But you have to dry the back as well as the front. Okay, now here's my tray of things to draw with. This is all part of my watercolor kit. I have nice fancy things like fountain pens. I doubt that this has any ink in it. Oh, it doesn't even have a cartridge in it. But I've got fountain pens. Here's another one. But I want to show you here's another fountain pen. But what I use the most are these cheap little felt tip pens, like this. And I can't remember right at the moment which ones are waterproof and which ones aren't. And I definitely want to use waterproof. So hang on, I'm just getting an assortment here. I have at least 3 brands. This is what happens, by the way. You do not need to go out and buy all this stuff. This is what happens when you are a full-time artist and a full-time working artist. That makes money. For one thing, I hate running out of supplies. I hate it. So, and plus, I'm an experimenter. I always want to try something new. So, you try all different kinds of things. Okay, now here's the categories. How many brands do I have here? At least, and most of these, of course, are different sizes. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brands of felt tip marker, and some of them are going to say waterproof. Archival ink, that's good, but that does not for waterproof. Okay, it says they're waterproof. By the way, word of warning. Some of them say they're waterproof, but they're not really. They're waterproof to a point, and they're waterproof after they dry. This one says it's waterproof, and this one does not. Okay, so if it doesn't say waterproof, you can pretty much guarantee that it is not. So I'm not using those. Got it? Here's another one of those. Now here's our old friend, the Sharpie marker. That's probably the most waterproof, and I love it. It's not archival, just for what it's worth. A Sharpie marker, this or its big brother, the fat one, these will actually turn brown over time, which is not too bad if lines turn brown. And I'm thinking like 10, 15, 20 years. Now, 100 years, it might disappear. I don't know, but that's always a go-to. So both of these say they're waterproof, and this one here, it says water fast. Yeah, it does say waterproof. Okay, and let's see what thicknesses I have here. Okay, there's fat, medium, and skinny. That's simple enough. Let me find a piece of scrap paper. Let's do a test real quick. Give me the fat one. So I'm going to mark this. This is called black, just to remind me. This is the black pen. And here's a number 03. This is the red pen. You with me? They're much finer. And here's I'm going to call this tan. Let me find a bold one. Number 3. There we go. Whoa. That'll do the job. Okay, that's tan. Now let's find out. Let me find a clean brush over here. Here we go. Black, red, tan. Yahoo. Now I've got color coming through. Good news. Good news, folks. They are all doing quite well. Yahoo, so I can use whichever ones I want. So tell you what, since right here I have a medium, fine, and super fine, I'm going to use those. So there you go. Better safe than sorry. Ooh, it's horrible to start painting on something you think is waterproof and then it starts bleeding all over the place. And I'm actually going to start with the fat point here. And let's start right in here at the focal point again. Jerry, and whoops, come on. Flow's not quite as good as I would like, but I think it'll do for now. And you may be able to tell here I'm responding in my drawing. And of course, if you watch me, you know the essence of good drawing or painting is making interesting marks. So I'm much more interested, much more intent that the marks that I'm making right now are interesting. More important that they be interesting than that they be accurate. I want them accurate. Don't get me wrong. I do want them accurate, but it's even more important that they are pleasant, fluid, playful, confident lines. All those words will do the job. Now, it's just possible too. So here again, here's my go by. It's just possible that I will give Jerry, if I think about it, if I keep track of this, I'm going to email him this sketch as soon as I finish this afternoon. Because this is nice to have a client that's in a little bit of a hurry, which is fine with me, because I don't like taking days and days and days to do a painting. So I'll get the oil painting out of here. Again, for those of you who just joining me perhaps, this is a watercolor sketch. Definitely a sketch, right? I mean, I've done so many things to this thing that would get me kicked out of oil paint, out of Watercolor Society of America in a heartbeat. I mean, I wouldn't even get through the front door with this kind of stuff. Fortunately, I'm not trying to get in the Watercolor Society of America, so I can do whatever the heck I want to, and that makes me really happy at the moment because I'm liking the way this is looking. You see the playfulness is that in those marks, and I'm responding, as you can see, to two things. I'm responding to the reference, the go by, and I'm responding very much to what's already on the paper, of course. All the way over here. And by the way, look at my grip. Look at this. This is the Control Freak grip. That's because it's time for the Control Freak grip. I'm not doing this sketching anymore. I'm doing details. So again, I hope I make that clear when I do my drawing videos, that I try to draw a distinction between what I call the real drawing grip, which is this, you could call it the sketching grip, but that's where the important lines are done. The lines I'm doing now are details. They're, in a sense, they're not as important because the big decisions have already been made. So yes, absolutely, I'm doing the control death grip. But I don't recommend drawing like this. Just for what it's worth, I've had viewers challenge me on that and say, I never heard anything like that. And then I look at their drawings and I go, no, you haven't. I can tell. Sorry, that's me being egotistical again. But not all people who draw are excellent, fantastic drawers. Most of the fantastic drawers, boy, this is going to sound horrible, they tend to move in a manner the way I move. And that's enough. That's enough. But I do recommend, again, oh, that's right, I forgot this woman's other arm. Well, I'm glad that I did, because there, I like that. She's nice, full of energy. I like the way those two couples, those two people look as a couple. As I said, I haven't met her. Had a delightful time visiting Jerry in his home, where I took this picture. Now, I hope you can see this. Do you see how abstract I've made? Look at this guy's face and his hair. That's ridiculous. Look at this arm. Yep. And yes, that's all on purpose. I mean, it's fun, it's easy, it's loose, but I don't want people focusing on that. I just want it to represent bodies in the room. I want the people focusing on, of course, on Jerry and his wife. But it's not going to be a portrait of Jerry and his wife either. So just say I want to focus. So here's what's going to happen. Again, to those of you who will not be able to stay with me through another of my marathon videos, I know it's the biggest reason why people can't or don't watch my videos, is they're simply too long. But so for those of you who can't stay with me, let me tell you where we go from here. Now, again, I'm having to keep reminding myself, come on, Nelson, this is just a sketch. You're not even being paid for this one. All you're going to do is take a picture of this and zap it through email over to Jerry to see if he approves. That's the only purpose of this. But of course, I'm an artist, so I get carried away. I can't help myself. I start having too much fun. I start saying, oh, yeah, but I want this to be a good drawing. And I do. That just shows you what a daft artist I am. Daft is an old-fashioned word for dumb. What a daft artist I am, because I can't stop myself in a way. I want to make this, of course, partly because you guys are watching me, I want to make this a fun, attractive, excellent piece of art. And again, I make no claims that this is a great piece of watercolor painting. This is, if it's great at anything, it's a great sketch. It's just a sketch. Wouldn't, doesn't meet the grade for great watercolor. But I hope it's a really good sketch, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty happy with the way it's looking at the moment. And again, if you missed the beginning, these sketches start out with watercolor pencils. I used how many colors? Yellow ochre, green, blue, fuchsia, that's a cool red, and purple. 5 colors of watercolor pencil. Then did the washes, big washes. And now I'm doing pen and ink, and I will come back and do at least 2 things to this before I'm finished. One is I'll push my darks darker and come in with a smaller brush and finish the darks. And then the very last thing that I do, which is the most illegal of all, I will come in with opaque white. And that is, you understand, as a watercolorist, that is the most illegal of all the things that I've done. That is the one that will get me run out of town, run out of watercolor town, faster than everything else put together. Is I'm going to come back, of course I'm being happily facetious. Again, I'm not trying to pretend that I'm doing a highbrow watercolor painting. Nope, this is just a lowbrow watercolor sketch, but dang, isn't it fun? And one of my favorite living local artists, years ago, there was a man named Neil Watson who lived in Raleigh, and he was a good friend at the time. He left here 25 years ago or so, which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed him. He was a medical doctor in England. He moved to America in his, I would guess, early to mid-50s. And rather than renew his medical, and he was a very specialist, his specialty was hands. He operated on hands. He was a very, very high up medical doctor in England. Moved to America and did not even renew his medical license. Instead, he pursued. Hi, Kim. Kim, good for you. You know what? I run into people who, because the way to get good at drawing, of course, is to draw. I would say, if I could give, and I know you're not asking for advice, but sorry, that's what this channel is about. If I were to recommend anything, it would be find some medium that is fun for you. Like, maybe it's crazy like this, or maybe it's oil pastel, or maybe it's pastel or something. Find some medium that doesn't feel to you like you're back in school. I don't mean that you were ever in school, but you know what I mean? That doesn't give you that school-ish homework feeling. Because that's the way some people feel about drawing. It's like, oh, I love painting, but I don't like sketching. Then what I'm going to say is find a sketch with oil paint, sketch with watercolors. Just pick up your small brushes, like this, and start sketching with your brush. And get a sketchbook, and instead of spending an hour doing something like just spend 5, 10, 12 minutes. I'm going to try to keep it to the low end of the scale. But this is kind of fun. Don't you think? Kind of fun. It's looking like a man and his wife standing proudly in front of their high dollar bar. Again, I had so much fun talking to Jerry because this is an area of life that I have no experience in. And by the way, if you missed it, this rectangle right here behind the woman's head, that is going to be my oil painting. But for this sketch, I'm just going to leave it blank. I'm not going to try to I'll explain that to my client. Say, that represents my painting. And of course, over here, I'm getting out of the focal point, so my jars, my bottles, and so on can be considerably more abstract. I was telling about my friend Neil Watson. If you can find him, I'm searching. Neil Watson watercolor. He did a lot of architectural stuff, which, as you may know, if you follow me, is what I do more than anything else is architecture. And he had a very nice hand. It was basically watercolor with pen and ink. And I liked his stuff. I liked him, and I liked his stuff very much. He was considerably older than me. I have no idea if he's still living. If he is, he's in his 80s somewhere. He moved to California, I believe. But very nice stuff. And that every time I feel inferior by doing pen and ink stuff on watercolor, I think about my good friend Neil Watson. And I go, wait a minute, his stuff is gorgeous, and I liked it. So yeah, it's okay. It's absolutely okay to. I'm looking at my small brushes here, not finding the exact one I want. I want a flat. And again, you do not need to be like me, anybody. But for some reason, I am. When it comes to watercolor, I am addicted to flat brushes, which is very peculiar because I'm quite not that way. Not at all that way in my oil painting. Very, very, very peculiar. But I'm not going to try to break the habit today. I'm just going to stick with it. Okay, these are my four brushes. I might use those. So there's a couple things I want to do. First of all, before I do anything else, I want to get this red glow going around the Jerry's neon sign up here. So that's the neon sign. Good enough. And I'll make that glow shining on a bunch of stuff around it. Fair enough? Now, after that, let me mix up some dark stuff. So some kind of Van Dyke brown. I love Van Dyke brown. It's a dangerous color in oil paints because traditional. Now I heard this from a reputable source 20 years ago, and I think it's true, but who knows? But traditional Van Dyke brown oil paint never dries, never ever dries. 100 years, we're talking, in 100 years, Van Dyke brown never dries, never cures. I'm sure it would be because it dries to the touch. But I've heard that, and it's just enough to put me off using Van Dyke brown in my oil paintings. If somebody, one of you wants to do the research on that now, tell me if that's still, see what you come up with. My guess is that if that was true with the traditional Van Dyke, that many paint manufacturers have since alleviated that problem and come up with either with a fake Van Dyke brown, or they've added something to the Van Dyke brown to make it dry. Nevertheless, in the realm of watercolor, no problem. We don't have to worry about that. Everything watercolor is so simple. It all dries. It's water, for goodness sake. Let me darken this bottle here. So just want to. This is not dark enough. It's too red, not dark enough. So let's come back and make this again a little bit darker. There we go. Yep. Up here in this corner. Again, this is what I'm looking at, folks. So I really do have a go-by, a reference that I'm paying quite a bit of attention to right now. It's because I'm trying to say, well, how dark do these corners in this cabinet get really dark? And the answer is, yeah, pretty much. Pretty dark. Now it's starting to look like a cabinet, isn't it? And at the end of this step right here, I'll probably go straight to the final layer, which is opaque white. Now I could, if I want to get fancy, I could do opaque warm colors. I could do opaque yellow and opaque orange and brown and so forth, but I don't think I want to get into that degree of detail. Again, this is just a quick sketch to show my client what I'm planning for his, because I felt like there were too many variables, too many unknowns. For instance, like putting the people in the front. Does he want people standing at the bar or no? Does he does he like this idea of he and his wife standing in this orientation, in this position, and so forth? So I don't like to, there's when you deliver a commissioned painting, it's like that old Holiday Inn commercial years ago. The best surprise is no surprises. When you deliver a commissioned painting, you don't want your client looking at it and getting that awful look on their face and they go, it happens anyway, I tell you. It happens anyway. This is the downside of commissioned work. But I want to try to guard against that as much as possible. I do not want Jerry looking at his final painting and saying, I want him looking at this painting and saying, okay, got it? And then it's okay because I can change things. When the oil painting is all done, oh my goodness, I want no umming anywhere in the county that I'm standing in. I want, oh man, that's fantastic. That's what I want. So that's why I'm doing all this work. Just a little bit. Oh, hey, Neil Watson. Oh, no kidding. I wonder if that's him. Did it say anything about him being an artist? Likely for him to die in Oxford because he was English and he may very well have gone back to the land of his youth in his final years. The picture I saw right there did not look like him, as I remember. No guarantee that it wasn't him. But, or maybe, anyway. Thanks for sending that, somebody. I missed who it was that sent that. I appreciate that very much. Okay, just a little bit. I want to do some shading on this woman. There we go. And on this guy. There we go. And on this guy as well. So just a little bit more roundness. Likewise on Jerry. Let's do some shading here. Okay, Yahoo! I am down to the last layer. I've got a couple more tricks I could do. One is I could pick up one of these finer pens and do some cross-hatching, some scribbling if I want to. But at the moment, I'm not inclined to do that if I can get away with it. Hang on just for a minute. I'm going to dry this really quickly, and I'll be back. I'll stay on this time. Hang on. Turn the page over, dry the back. All right, dry enough. Now, let me show you the two options that I have for doing white. First of all, I have this little cup here that has dried gouache in it, and I keep a tube of designer gouache, which is, of course, an opaque watercolor. I would squirt this in there and then begin to paint. Now that's one. Now let me show you. It will not dry. How about that? Thanks, Kim, for letting me know about that. That's crazy. Like I said, I bet somebody's made a fake Van Dyke Brown that dries fast, but that's interesting. It's just too bad because I remember as a kid discovering Van Dyke Brown and I loved the color. Still remember that. Okay, but here's what I'm going to do. Since this is a sketch for no money, I'm actually going to use an office supply product, not an art store product at all, office supply product. And because I can do it real quick. So here you go. Jerry's, Jerry apostrophe S, Jerry's Bar, BAR, cash only. That's a joke. Jerry's joke, I mean. Okay. Now, anything that's anything that is supposed to be white. Now there's two things I can do with this. Wow. Thank you for that information. Yeah, that looks like him. He was in North Carolina, went back to California, and then back to England. Well, Lord bless him. I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, so here's a trick, though. You can put it down, and it dries fast. Thank you, Bruno. You can put this stuff down. Of course, it's designed to dry quickly, but if you touch it real quickly, you can spread it out and create. Now, of course, I'm getting white all over my finger, but that's a problem for another time. I'm not going to worry about that. Yeah, thank you for looking that up for me. I'm not surprised. You know, he was quite a bit older than I, and I am no spring chicken anymore. I was a spring chicken once. It's hard to believe now. Now I'm a bald spring chicken with a wrinkly face. One of the keys to keeping young is have friends that are older than you. And also have friends that are younger than you. Okay, so again, just real quick highlights here. I'm assuming you can see why I might like this technique, because it's fast. Again, if I want it soft, I'll just come in here and touch it real quickly. And if I want a real pop, like I will on all these bottles, I'll come in, I'll be doing pops of light on virtually every bottle, because I want it to look as it does look in the photo. I want it just to sparkle, all these bottles. I can see now that I should have done more darks on these bottles, because the spark is not sparking enough. But you're getting the idea anyway. It's close enough, close enough. Yeah. A little bit more highlight on these people, on their clothing. I should probably ask Jerry what colors his wife wears, or ask him, because he won't know. Ask him to ask his wife what colors. I've got her in dark green here, and I kind of like it quite a bit, but she might say, no, I never wear that color. So we don't want that happening. Oh, I had some pictures down here. Now I forgot and eliminated them. Let me put them back in just in white. There, get it? How's that? That is one quickie. I think I can call it done. I could do a little bit of highlight on this, on the edge of this girl, because that's probably what I'll do in the oil painting. There, of course, there'll be a lot more light effects in the oil painting than there are in this quick little study. Anything else? I don't think so. So there you go. I hope you can see that well enough. Let me get it lined up here for you. Huh. Good. I will check out Royal College of Surgeons. Yep, that would be him, of course. He was, like I said, pretty high up, and he became a full-time artist. Isn't that fascinating? Anyway, there it is. I would like to point out. Let me find something to point with. Do you see this little interplay? See this green, bluish green stuff in here? All over. That's why I like it. All over is the blue and the green in particular. Oh, thank you. I'm reading Bruno's story of my friend. I appreciate that very much. Sorry to hear he's gone. Sorry to hear he died from a brain tumor. It's not a happy story. Where did I put my pencils? Here they are. Okay, so I just realized one more little quick trick. Come in here with some colored pencils and get the feeling that this is a red neon sign here. All right, that's it. Done for the day. Wait, let me sign this. While you're here, I'll go ahead and sign it. Dan, my name is Dan Nelson. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks, Bruno, for giving me the bad news. I'd rather get it than not get it. And thanks for doing that research for me while I'm doing other things. Again, there we go. And I'm happy. I like my, so I would mat this.